When it comes to the speaking section of the IELTS exam, the test is exactly the same for both the academic IELTS exam and the general IELTS exam. So today I just want to give you an overview of the speaking section so you know exactly what to expect on test day. So let's get started, and I'm going to share an overview, and then I'm going to give you some clear tips to help you find success on test day. So the speaking test is a short face-to-face interview with an examiner, and it lasts between 11 and 14 minutes. And as I mentioned, it's the same for both academic and general. And one thing to know about a couple of developments that have taken place in the past few years is that sometimes the IELTS exam speaking test will be face-to-face at the test center in the same room with the examiner. And sometimes in some countries, depending where you live, it will be via a Zoom call. Not all countries offer that, but sometimes the IELTS exam will be later in the day after you've done the rest of the sections of the IELTS exam, and sometimes it could even be on different days. So when you book your test, this is an important thing to be aware of, and make sure you know the exact time and location for your IELTS speaking test. So there are 3 parts to the speaking section, and again, they'll all be finished within 15 minutes. So first of all, in part 1, this is where the introduction, where you meet the examiner, you show your ID, and you give some specific information, and then the test will begin, and you'll be asked 3 or 4 questions on some familiar topics. And the length of this entire part of the speaking test is only 4 to 5 minutes. One thing that's important to understand about the IELTS speaking test, whether it's academic or general, it's the same. And really, the topic of the speaking test is you. It's a kind of an informal conversation that you're having with the examiner. So this introductory part of the speaking exam will include questions about your personal life, maybe your home, your family. You may be asked about your school or your work, your hobbies and interests, and maybe just the things that are a part of your daily routine. So this is where you're just, it's like almost like any conversation you have with anybody you meet for the first time. It's like questions that are very similar to questions that anybody would ask if they wanted to get to know you. So these, it's really important in the IELTS speaking test to recognize that you are going to be very familiar and be able to speak very naturally about any questions or any topics you're asked to speak about, because they will be personal, and you'll just be using your everyday language as if you were in an everyday, any day type of conversation with anyone. So that's the format of part 1, 4 to 5 minutes, where you're just asked personal questions about your lifestyle and your background. But then we come to part 2, and this is often the part that most test takers are nervous about. It's where you need to give an individual talk. And this whole part of the speaking test takes about 3 to 4 minutes. What happens is you're given a cue card with a topic, and it will have 3 or 4 bullet points with questions that you're asked to talk about. And again, this will be a personal topic. It may be about a possession that's important to you. It may be about an event in your life, like a wedding you attended or a birthday party. And whatever the topic, you'll be asked to speak about it for up to 2 minutes. But before you start speaking, when the examiner gives you the cue card, you will have 1 minute to prepare your talk. And this is where You'll have the opportunity, because you're given a paper and a pencil, and you can make notes and structure and plan and organize your talk before you begin speaking. But again, it will be a topic that's right from your own life and experience, and it should be no difficulty to come up with the right ideas and suggestions for coming up with a talk and being able to speak for 2 minutes. Just one little tip here: it's important to organize your talk, because what could happen if it's very familiar and something that's easy to talk about, you could say too much and not cover everything you need to say. So be careful to really organize and structure your talk when it comes to this part of the speaking test. And then in part 3 is where you have a two-way discussion with the examiner. And this takes another 4 or 5 minutes, where you'll be asked to comment and give your opinion and your viewpoint on a topic that's very similar to the one that you just discussed in your 2-minute talk. It's where you might be asked more general questions about the same topic. And it's important to know that actually throughout the whole speaking test, including the introductory questions, there usually is a common theme, whether it's technology, whether it's hobbies or interests, or education or employment. This topic, this subject will continue throughout the entire 14 or 15 minutes. So when you come to part 3, you may be asked to give your opinion. So if you gave a 2-minute talk in part 2 about a possession that's important to you, maybe in part 3 you might have a question like, how do people in your country use possessions to display their status? Or do you think possessions are an important part of showing your status in life? So it's just a continuation of the topic, where you'll be asked to give your opinion on 2 or 3 questions more generally. So let me just give you some tips for each section of the speaking test. In part 1, again, be prepared to answer questions about you, your work, your school, your family, your home, or your hobbies. And you should be prepared to answer each question with 1 or 2 good sentences. You don't want to give answers that are too short and do not add details. You want to extend your answer so that with 1 or 2 sentences, maybe in 25 seconds or so, you give a good answer to the question. So always add a little extra detail than what you're specifically asked in this question. For example, do you enjoy school? Yeah, I enjoy school. I attend Woodruff High School, and I've been going there for 4 years since grade 9, and I found it a very valuable experience. So you can add these little extra details like where and when, even if it's a simple question like, do you enjoy your studies? So that's some tips for part 1. For part 2, as I mentioned earlier, it's really important to make and use your notes, because again, 25% of your mark in the speaking test is how well you organize your thoughts and your ideas. So don't be afraid to make the notes and use them. You don't want to make notes that are so long that you read them, but you do want to make notes. And you'll make these notes by organizing your talk using the questions that are on the cue card and addressing each question. And then again, extend your answer by adding details. You want to add answers to all the question words: who and what and why and when and where, even if these aren't specifically in the cue card, if you're describing a possession that's very important to you, you can add a detail like who gave it to you, where did you get it. So even if that question is not specifically on the cue card, it's an extra detail that you can add in. And if you're looking for tips on part 2 and creating your talk and organizing your talk, make sure to watch the next video after this one, where I'll give you some tips specifically for being very confident in part 2 of the speaking test. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel, where you'll find lots of different videos and lessons and tips and hints for every kind of question and every section of the IELTS exam. And as you prepare your talk, be prepared to speak for 2 minutes. The examiner may cut in and ask you a different question after a minute and a half or so if they feel that you've addressed the question, but be prepared to talk for the full 2 minutes. And when it comes to giving your opinion on certain topics in part 3, just remember there is no right or wrong answers. Your opinion is your opinion. Again, use the extra details to extend your answer. And one thing that's really important to realize throughout the speaking test, if you're ever asked a question and you're not clear on exactly what it is you're being asked, or you don't understand it completely, don't be afraid to ask the examiner to explain. You will not lose marks for asking for clarification or an explanation of the question that you're being asked. And take your cues from the examiner. One of the things that you can do is listen carefully to the question, and as you give your answer, you can repeat it by paraphrasing and make sure you're on the right topic. Well, I hope you've found these tips helpful. Don't hesitate to subscribe to this YouTube channel and follow me for more advice and more tips on everything you need to know for the IELTS exam. And I want to wish you all the best as you prepare for your future in a new English-speaking country.